a century-long battle fought between monsters and humans decades ago. As both parties fatigued and failed to recall why the battle started, peace was declared, and monsters and humans now coexist together. Dr. Glenn Litbite is a brilliant doctor and researcher, particularly in the field of monsters and other inhuman species. His biggest skill is his capability to think beyond the box, approaching his situations as puzzles to be solved via logic and reasoning. His talent, combined with his gentle, altruistic character, pleasant clinical skills, and charming looks, has gained him the admiration and devotion of several of his patients, and he works alongside his succubus helper, Saphantite Saphi Neeks, to cure creatures. Saphi's Glenn is a childhood buddy who moved into Glenn's home for a while as a result of a business agreement between both families. Glenn and Sapphire got close during this period. Sophie was brought to her family back after a year of staying together, but it left an indelible mark on Glenn. Glenn would subsequently join the Nemi Academy, where he would meet Saphi by chance. After completing their degree in the Monster Doctor program, he and Saphi co-founded the Litbite Hospital. Glenn is conscious of Sophie's affections for him, but he does not react to them. Glenn is instructed to do a medical assessment on combatants at the town arena by his instructor Asilla, Dr. Thulhi Squeal. Upon completing an exam on a young golem, she has found that she is expecting. A centaur, Tizalia Scythia, who is the lone successor of Scythia Transport, is among the combatants. Confesses he wants to marry somebody similar to Glenn, making Saphi envious. Tizalia hasn't won a fight in almost 1 month, though Glenn says she's well physically. Later, he finds her conviction in her body's perfection implied she rarely permitted her to be equipped with metal shoes, so her feet had deteriorated abnormally, making her lose balance. Ignoring her complaints, Glenn gets her shoes and she begins dominating fights once more. Glenn worries that Cthulhu was trying to see if he would handle a tough case. Saphi describes how she encountered Glenn as a toddler amid the war while she was brought to Glenn's dad as a political prisoner. She didn't return to him until they both enrolled at the Monsters Medical School. Saphi and Glenn went shopping on the Merrill Waterways, which Scotty Dragenfeld constructed. A mermaid singer, Lilala Hines, a singer-mermaid, promises Saphi and Glenn to buy a song, and although her great brilliance, she is not able to complete it. Glenn determines that Lilala has irritated gills as a result of not having much spent in the sea. Lilala believes she would soon be paid to perform at the Central Council Auditorium. Meanwhile, she has to perform on the waterways to assist her siblings and her mom. Lilala tries to rescue a humanoid baby who slips into the river. Furthermore, because her gills are swollen, she breathes water into her chest accidentally and continues to sink. Glenn saves her by pushing oxygen inside her lungs through a kiss, allowing her lungs to evacuate the ingested water. When Glenn treats Lilala's lungs, she begins to sing full-time in the council auditorium and grows feelings for him. A lady is hunting a robber in the nighttime when she gets attacked. On the following day, when Sapphire and Glenn have finished curing Lady Scotty, a young slime girl, Kunai Zeno, her guard, visits them. Scotty asks whether they can assist in finding and reattaching Kunai's arm. Kunai is revealed as a flesh monster. Kunai declines Glenn's assistance when Scotty left, citing her dislike of physicians, and goes to search for its limb by herself. She spots another robber outside and chases them. Afterward, while seeking Kunai's limb, Glenn stumbles across Tizalia, who discovers Kunai's leg. Glenn examines the leg and notes that the sutures are deteriorating. He then proceeds farther into town, where he encounters Lilala, who is holding Kunai's arm. Glenn, despite Kunai's objections, contains different body pieces in an attempt to find her. However, Saphi is talking to Aranya Tarantera Arachnida, her friend, in the hospital. Kunai thanks Glenn when he was done. The robbers were then shown to be observing. Saphi informs Glenn that she thinks she is expecting him to come to the facility. Saphi admits that she had been harboring a discarded harpy egg. Suddenly, a gang of robbers attacks the clinic. As they come across Kunai, who informs them that the robbers are slaveholders, they accompany Lilala and Scotty to the waterways, where they are ambushed by snipers. Tizalia, luckily, was close and confronts them. Some of the harpies in the hideaway have an affected egg due to anxiety. As Saphi and Scotty fight the robbers, Saphi laments not telling Glenn about her terminal condition and their family's assassin skills. She is really on directions as a youngster to murder Glenn's parents and siblings if the business transaction fee. Saphi is infected and falls unconscious amid the combat. Glenn reveals to her once she recovers that now the slavers are captured and the harpy can securely lay her egg. Sappi resolves to tell Glenn the truth, which he admits he already knew. Sappi is overjoyed that she tries to seduce him, just to fall unconscious once more. Glenn offers to stroke her tail until she falls asleep, similar to when they were kids. Sappi suggests that the fatal ailment she is suffering from may simply be affection. Glenn hires Tessalia to drive them to the Harpy Hamlet for the Harpies' medical examinations. Kay, one of Tessalia's attendants, is injured on a rock slide and is taken to the village by the Harpies, who Glenn diagnoses with a sprain. Lorna, Kay's childhood friend, gets excessively preoccupied without Kay and nearly jeopardizes Tessalia's talks to hire the Harpies as air couriers. Tessalia, concerned, requests that Glenn check Lorna, while Glenn is at a loss for how to begin because Lorna seems to have a psychological problem. Lorna might feel worthless with no one in control, according to Sappi, because she was brought up high-strung and also more vulnerable than Tessalia and Kay and Tessalia. Glenn takes the unusual choice to strip Lorna of all control, providing her with a leash and blindfold. Strangely, Lorna feels more comfortable right once since she can concentrate on her work, while Glenn personally believes Lorna enjoys being tied down. As an appreciation, Lorna and Kay attempt to lure Glenn jointly, figuring that if the two sleep together, Tessalia will most likely force Glenn to take some responsibility and marry her. He is swift to deny it, but Lorna and Kay remain hopeful that Glenn will someday become their master. Tessalia, Glenn, and Sappi pay a visit to Illy afterwards seeing Kay. Glenn checks her and declares that she's not ill and is just molting. Tessalia intervenes as an enraged Illy tries to assault Glenn. As Tessalia approaches, Illy dares her to a battle. Tessalia then tells Sappi and Glenn as she has won the battle. Glenn begs Tessalia and Sappi for assistance as she brings him a wing Illy dropped during the struggle. The next day, they collect all the wings they can locate. Later on that evening, Illy remembers how she used to fly. Glenn explains that she is molting because she is growing her mature wings and has a phoenix bloodline in her as they finally meet up with her. Though he was already aware of this, according to Lindworm, soon, an overjoyed Illy flaunts her new adult wings, revealing that she is capable of flying once more. Glenn notices one of her fresh wings is heated in his palm and wonders whether Illy is close to the phoenix since he initially imagined. Later, Aranya goes to meet Glenn at the facility. Illy appears as Sappi and Glenn are ready to leave for home, smeared in a goopy mess. Glenn recognizes it as Arachne silk. Glenn and Sappi are on their way to the forest when they come upon Aranya, who introduces her to him. Aranya explains that she is coming to capture Illy so she may witness her colorful wings for her. Aranya encounters Illy in the town, and she is overjoyed. However, Tessalia and Sappi disagree on Aranya. Lorna, Sappi, and Kay go to the natural hot springs the next day. Aranya comes over to Glenn as this is going on. She then invites him to accompany her to a snare where she captures him. She wishes to attract him to get closer to Sappi. Tessalia, on the other hand, comes to halt her. Aranya claims that both she and Tessalia have similar desires. Sappi appears right as they are ready to attack one another. She informs them that Glenn seems to have no time for courting. Later that same night, she confesses her feelings for Glenn. They are then disturbed by the sounds of vibrations created by Gigas. The community is terrified as the enormous deity approaches. Tessalia takes command and organizes everyone to help leave the town, then send Illy to meet with Lady Scotty and Lindworm before sneaking out to confront the monster alone. Glenn and Sappi, who discovered she did not belong to the gang, stopped her. The gigantic, Beyond the Film, then comes and requests for seeing Glenn. Meanwhile, Scotty informs a terrified Illy about her presence in Lindworm. Glenn notices Dion has a cold head and provides her medication and requests Aranya to sew her fresh, thicker garments, whereas the Harpies, specifically Illy, become acquaintances with her. The gang returns to Lindworm to open the infirmary, and Glenn invites Tessalia for a dinner. Tessalia discovers Sappi snooping on them throughout the meal, and both resolve that they won't lose the fight for Glenn's love. Glenn detects something odd with Scotty's tail soon after everybody else comes just to Merrill Waterways for something like a commemorative event. Scotty collapses in presence of everybody while making a speech. Though he reveals to Sappi and Glenn at the Lindworm Hospital that Scotty seems to have a unique illness that would ultimately kill her, regardless of her tough dragon genetics. She also expresses Scotty's lack of desire to be treated. Later, Kunai asks Glenn to assist Scotty. Glenn heard her voice first time as he enters Scotty's room and notices she does have the look of a little girl. Scotty hesitantly submits to be tested, and it is discovered that she has a tumor on her breast which has started invading her vessels and affecting her blood circulation. She feels it as punishment for her ancestors' departure from the world of gods, as well as her acts in the Great War. Glenn requests approval from Thulhi to undertake a difficult operation, and he accepts after learning his passionate intentions, but thinks Scotty may still require convincing, and they will need at minimum one more doctor. Glenn requests Aranya's stitching talents to restore the invaded veins. Aranya initially resists, but gives up when she realizes she would be capable of wearing a nurse's outfit like Saphi. Glenn continues his preparations, unfazed by the obstacle. Kunai tries unsuccessfully to persuade Scotty to get the procedure. Later, Glenn goes to the Kuklo shop to speak with the owner about making certain surgical equipment when he encounters Meme. Meme feels uncomfortable as they walk because of her dearth of self-confidence. As they go to the boss, most to her displeasure, he tells her to make the syringes. Later, Aranya visits the hospital to prepare for the operation with Kunai. Glenn and Thulhi investigate the new instruments. Meme is working in the design room, reviewing the syringes when she notices the wheel. Billy goes to the hospital the next day to collect Glenn since Meme has fallen unconscious. Glenn brings her to the hospital and questions her about what she's been working on, assuming she had tiredness and dizziness. She next tells everybody her new strategy for making finer and stronger needles, earning her applause. Aranya and Saphi wish Glenn good luck as he travels out to persuade Scotty to get the procedure once more. Glenn arrives in the Central Committee Hall to persuade Scotty to undergo the procedure. Aranya, Tizalia, and Saphi are having a girls' night out in a tavern. Saphi discovers Aranya taking a dragon's skin as they get to the hospital. Tizalia and Saphi intercept her as she attempts to leave. Taisel Saphi have a passionate talk with a stunned Aranya rather than turning it into the officials. They also tell Aranya that she deeply loves Glenn. Glenn eventually gets up with Scotty, who reveals why she refused to have the procedure. Scotty chooses to get the procedure after all when Glenn reminds her that she wants to live a fulfilled life. Night before the operation, Glenn, Thulhi, Glenn, Aranya, and Saphi work on Scotty, as the rest of Lindworm waits with hope. The city delighted the following morning when it is discovered that the operation was successful. Scotty appears during a celebration following the operation. Although his professional demeanor in the presence of female patients, Glenn is also capable of experiencing shock or discomfort for someone else, as is when Scotty revealed herself in front of crowd to prove that no signs of her excised tumor remained. She then makes her way to the hospital. However, Glenn is caring for a sick Saphi. He bumps into Kunai and Scotty as he exits the hospital to conduct a house visit. As their vehicle breaks down, Liam appears and repairs. Scotty expresses his gratitude to Meme and Glenn by presenting them with 2 enormous bottles of champagne. Aranya cares Saphi in the hospital. Dion assists the Harpies at the Harpy settlement. As Glenn comes, he instructs Kay, Lorna, and Tizalia to move the containers. While Illy and her companions arrive at the facility, Aranya taunts Saphi about Glenn. They bring the food from their town and the highlands to Aranya and Saphi. Glenn comes just then and is surrounded by the females. Glenn recounts that everyone continued offering his food on his walk home. During the evening, a celebration is held throughout the city. There the season ends.
Leave us a like and subscribe to our channel.